Here we go. It's a Friday morning, and we are always happy to welcome on, as we've done every few weeks here over the last couple of months, Tony's Kansas City. You know him well. Tony Botello joins us on KCMO. Good morning, Tony. How are you? Good
morning, Pete. I'm pretty good.
Good, man. Well, let's just start off with what we were just talking about before the break, the Royals drama. I know you heard part of what Mayor Lucas said on this show yesterday. He sounds like a guy to me, Tony, that knows the Royals are probably going to go up north. Is that how he sounded to you?
Yeah, he doesn't sound pleased. And, he kind of referenced a lot of, past history. Oh, I've lived in Kansas City my whole life. But you don't have to go back that far. You only have to go back to 2006. And I was there. I was such a optimistic blogger. Wanted to...
jilted.
Yeah, just was like, oh, wow, I wonder what these politicians are up to. It must be exciting. Well, what they were up to in 2006... Your longtime listeners might know, they came up with a monstrosity so silly. This is how good the hand-holding was back then, because both teams sucked, just horrible. And everyone came together we needed new stadiums. And the politicians at the time were so desperate, so just out of sorts, because they knew teams were moving around even back then. I think everybody, I want to go back just a little bit further. Everybody remembers I think every sports fan remembers the devastation in Baltimore, just people's souls crushed when it's a legend of football, when the Colts just overnight moved out of Baltimore and took with trucks, and they were just gone overnight in the dead of winter. And you had people from Baltimore. Honestly, if you want to track the downward spiral of that city, a lot of it starts with the Colts leaving, because people. I mean, that was a culture. There's a great movie, Barry Levinson movie called Diner, just built around this loyalty to the Colts. It was really part of their culture. They take off to Indianapolis. People's souls just crushed, and happened in the middle of the night. So knowing that in 2006, I believe it was Kay Barnes. Yeah, Kay Barnes back then just took them by the hand, everyone, and said, we'll build you something as stupid, dumb as a rolling roof. Just please stay. Just please stay. We'll give you everything. We passed $850 million. And there was, it's not like it is now. And so I think your point to how he just kind of seems out of the process, kind of frustrated, kind of upset. In 2006, we held their hand, told them we would build them a fairyland castle, did whatever it takes. And as you've pointed out over your reporting over the past few weeks, we're not there.
No. And on top of that, in 2006, of course, they passed the $800-some-odd million, but they reject the rolling roof. The voters rejected the rolling roof, so that doesn't end up happening. But now we're in this kind of weird place where we know the Chiefs are going to want something. The Royals, we know what they want, hundreds of millions of dollars from the taxpayer. Doesn't it make sense to kind of send them up north and then you kind of double down on the Chiefs? It actually, to me, it makes more sense for the region to do that, even though it will be a black eye on the mayor's office, the county executive, and the city to some degree. But it makes more sense than putting all the burden on Jackson County.
It does. I think the specifics when you start talking about the tax base, and that's the one last thread that Jackson County is clinging on to, is that we have the bigger tax base. Maybe, but I don't know. For me, it kind of comes down to just the plan.
Yeah.
What you've laid, I think you were the first one to do this. What you've laid out in Clay County is impressive. They got a big, huge site. It's nice. It overlooks the skyline. It's a really good package. I'm not so sure of that East Village. My dad, who's retired, used to work near that site. He tells me stories of, fighting hobos with his umbrella going to work. Maybe it'll...
Well, there's been a couple murders there in the last few weeks, and right where the ballpark would be.
Yeah.
And you got homeless shelters right down the street, and they're great homeless shelters. They're doing good work, but, you going to move those, or are they just going to be kind of there, too? And that creates a whole other set of problems, potentially.
Right, and the parking just doesn't work out. I think there's more space. There's more space, and then you talk about fan safety. A big picture, are the Royals going to stay in a city with historic homicides, historic taxes, historically low voter turnout? At some point, all these things start adding up, and the move becomes not really so illogical.
But John Sherman will never say any of that, right? He won't say, I'm moving because they can't get their homicides under control. They're down 300 cops. The tax situation is overburdensome. He won't ever say that, right?
No, and he's smart not to. I mean, I think you in your interview you really sense Quentin's frustration with him not putting anything on the table, and like I keep wanting to bring voters back to 2006 because there wasn't I'm not doing anything. Kay Barnes didn't smile a lot, but all her people just you put on the hat, you do the jazz hands, whatever you want. And that's just not the environment we have.
To compare it to '06, if Quentin and Frank White had a better working relationship or any kind of a relationship, would this be going any differently, do you think, or no?
Probably, yeah, maybe. I mean, Frank White, we could do an hour show just on all the grudge match there, him not showing up to legislative meetings, kind of missing in action, and just the history back there. So, yeah, this is... Maybe I think we're watching it. It kind of reminds me of Trump in 2016. And I was there. I was like, yeah, this guy could win. And you kept trying to tell people, yeah, this guy could win. And you could see the plane coming in low.
Yep.
And people just didn't want to see it. And you keep telling people, and they just don't want to believe it. So, like I said, the tax base issue is the last thread that they're hanging to.
Tony Botello of Tony's Kansas City is on KCMO. New city council this week. Mayor Lucas starting that second term. What has to happen to get the city on a better trajectory, and can it happen with this council?
The game, as always, and I think here's what I want to start. The game is, if you have Mayor Quentin's approval, the game is count to 7. And without his approval, the game is count to 9. And if you look through the new council, all their resumes, all their community reputation and whatnot, is there anybody out there that can wrangle 9 votes? Right now, no. And so what you're looking at, basically my biggest takeaway is the ascendancy of the Mayor Pro Tem, Raina Park Shaw. She is the one who benefited most from this. She has a husband who's parks director, and she is very well locked in. Maybe off program where we were kind of talking, or before the show, we were talking about what the future looks like, and I think Mayor Quentin just gave kind of tacit approval to maybe his replacement,
Raina Park Shaw,
right?
Because a lot of people thought Andrea Boo was going to get that Mayor Pro Tem. I'm glad she didn't. Raina Park Shaw is a much better choice by far. Boo is completely lost in space. But were you surprised by that?
I was. At the last moment, I heard Kevin O'Neill was moving our office furniture around. So it was really
what purpose was he moving office furniture around?
Just to clear things out. Just maybe a little impromptu party space. I don't know. I don't know what they do there.
Party space. What is he, Matt Lauer? Jeez.
Okay. So she really got a boost in her career, and a lot of people had assumed that it would be Melissa Patterson Hadley, the new mayor, who does have the favor of Mayor Cleaver. She just has a ton of community support.
Yes.
Going to have a great career in Kansas City because just a groundswell of support behind her. Mayor Quentin really gave a boost to Raina Park Shaw, and we're kind of going to see where that goes. If there's a face-off, I was talking to one of my friends. I said, her stock is really rising, and they very... a great line. They were like, yeah, but it's Kmart stock. I don't think that. I think that she is connected, and we'll have to see how that plays out. But the game is count to 7, count to 9.
All right. Tony Botello of Tony's Kansas City. I want to ask him about the 2 gun ordinances that were proposed this week to try to reduce the homicide count in Kansas City. We'll do that. Plus get into the Jackson County woes coming up with Tony Botello of Tony's Kansas City next on KCMO. We are here in studio with Tony Botello of Tony's Kansas City, must-go-to blog here in town. Be sure to check it out if you're not already an active reader, and I know that many of you are. Tony, this week we found out the mayor announced that 2 of the first ordinances that he will be introducing are ordinances that he believes will help curb the violent crime issue in Kansas City. One is to go after switches, where people are taking some of these guns and turning them into automatic weapons. The other is to require parental consent for minors buying ammunition, which doesn't make sense to me because both of these things are already federal laws on the books. So what's the purpose here?
The most that I can make out of it, and after listening to him in your interview, kind of him like, oh, you get the new tools argument. That's always what you hear is, we'll be able to charge them at municipal level, which would be great if we had a prosecutor's office that was actively pursuing more charges. I think the biggest news out of the prosecutor's office this week was she went to testify against a former KCP detective. So, I mean, that's where the focus of that office seems to be. Doesn't seem to be keeping minors. And, he said some great stuff. I was surprised to notice, like, you agreeing. Nobody wants kids walking around with a bunch of ammo, with their little Rambo clips.
No one wants that. And by the way, the most radical, and I use that word loosely, the most radical 2A person in Missouri isn't advocating for 15-year-olds to walk into stores and buy, ammunition. So it's like, but it just feels to me, the frustration for me is not that I don't agree with the policy. I'm fine with it, but it's not getting to the core issue. And if there's one thing I would love this mayor to do, the one thing I'd love to see him do, Tony, is just go after his own prosecutor and just admit that her soft on crime approach, the fact that she's more interested in going after cops than after criminals, is getting people killed in this town. And the Star won't say it. The mayor's office wouldn't say it. And that, to me, is the most frustrating thing right now.
Earlier, I think last week, Tucker Carlson did an interview with Ice Cube, and so these things can happen. I guess when I'm hearing you, what I'm hearing you say is it's going to take some leadership to kind of change the conversation in this town. And with this kind of ordinance, that's not what we're seeing. We're seeing talking points, and I always, as somebody who at one point was a progressive in their life, you see things come down from DC. And this is a talking point, we're going to do this against guns and maybe it's going to work. And then the latest one, which it's just so sad because Kansas City's all over the country. They're like, oh no, crimes are really down. You heard him try to cling to a thread. Oh, well, shootings are down. Our homicides are 25% bigger and worse than last year. And that's just last year. But no, our shootings are down. You really see him reaching, and I think as somebody who follows this stuff pretty closely, I always have, is that you see them reaching for that thread, and it's just not there.
Well, if shootings are down and homicides are up, that just means people have better aim. That's literally all that means. Right. That's not something to be proud of. So, I mean, that is really grasping at straws. Why do you think it is then, Tony, that, and you may know the inner workings politically behind the scenes on this, why do you think they aren't going after the prosecutor in this town?
I can only liken it to this week. It's just because it's, especially in Kansas City, it's not done to attack your colleagues. And the biggest surprise this week was Quentin going after Frank White and just saying, hey, or not so much Frank White, but the assessor, and really saying people, you're putting people out of their homes. And in Kansas City, overall, that extends. It's kind of nice, that's the thing about living here, is that kind of congenial, very polite, very nice. I call it pathologically polite. That does extend across all cultures. Latino people here are a lot more polite than they are in other places. And so when you saw him criticize the assessor, it really was groundbreaking. I mean, if you saw her press conference, the look in her face was like, this has never happened before. Mm-hmm. And so something very, very rare that, I mean, I guess I think Republicans sometimes are better about kind of, trying to whittle down and have an ecumenical movement about what is this party about. Democrats are very much, especially Democrats in Kansas City, where we come out of the culture of machine politics, we all know to get on the same page.
Mm-hmm. And
So I think that's part of it.
Yeah, that's true. Tony Botello, Tony's Kansas City's joining us. Speaking of Jackson County, you mentioned, and I agree, I mean, when it comes to Team Q versus Team Frank White, I'm siding with Team Q on this every day in terms of how this debacle's gone with the assessments. How surprised have you been regarding the aloofness of Frank White in all this?
I'm very surprised, and I think it's going to become an issue. I honestly, and I hate to kind of lead people. I don't want to tune in for our next episode, but
that's what we do here. It's fine. It's a tease.
If you look at where this is going to go, it's going to start to get ugly once the Missouri legislature comes back in session, and then you're going to start to get pressure from Jeff City. And and the biggest surprise to me, which I was very pleased to hear you working just a little dig, and it wasn't a dig, it was just a little observation, is that nobody's seen Frank White.
No.
And this week I posted just an email fight privy to at least 24 people across the county. And it's just an email felt like, hey, come down and share your concerns with the whole legislature. That was Legislator Manny Abarca from the 1st District. Just add like, hey, come and show up. Let's talk about it. And I think his response was, well, when you stop conducting legislative meetings and not town halls, I don't know what's wrong with the town hall, but
I don't know what's wrong with, as the county executive, showing up to your own damn meeting where your legislature is actively meeting and working. Like that is... He just feels so out of touch with the moment.
Behind the scenes, I got a little bit of news to break for you. Behind the scenes, they are always, they're already, not always, but they're already looking for replacements. They're talking about the next, like he is so checked out. One of the names that we're hearing, we might be recycled. Tune in 4 years from now. Eileen Weir.
Oh, Independence Mayor, former Independence
Mayor. Her name is coming up in these discussions.
Yeah, but that's 3 years. That's 3.5 years from now, Tony. Right?
Right.
I mean, we just got done with this, and you had a chance to put Teresa Galvin in, who was kind of just like a right of center Republican. She wasn't some rabid conservative, and the people of Jackson County said no. We want more Frank. So I'm struggling on the sympathy front for Jackson County taxpayers at this point because they put this guy back in, knowing full well the incompetency was on display. Not like it's been lately, but it was on display the last 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't figure out why they wanted to go for more of this.
It is our legacy of machine politics, and sooner or later we're going to find out. We'll have a lot of time to think about that when we're not watching the Royals.
Tony, final thoughts here on where we go moving forward, whether it's Jackson County, Kansas City. I mean, what are you seeing the battles over the next few months be about and be like?
Unfortunately, oh God, I hate to be a bummer, but unfortunately, this homicide thing is going to get worse. Quentin is right. When those property, look forward to this, when those property tax assessment turns into property tax bills, that is where we're going to see a lot of people hit the roof. And going forward, also the development. Quentin talked about before the election, we had this is the most progressive council. First thing that I noticed out of the finance committee was air rights for the Strata skyscraper. So we're going to continue to have that fight over development. We're going to continue to have these fights over housing. And in the meantime, we're going to slouch toward 2024 where we all, try to get on the same side.
Yeah, well, it's going to be interesting. And maybe we'll do, as we get into the thick of 24, we'll have you back and do a little. I know you're not a national politics guy, but we got to get your thoughts on things as 24 unfolds. So you'll be willing to do that for us?
Yeah, especially locally, because we're going to sign on to all crazy kind of stuff. Everybody's going to put on a happy face and pretend like we like Joe Biden.
Tony Botello, Tony's Kansas City. Go to the website. Tony, thanks for coming in, my man.
Thank you, Pete.